Thank you, everybody, for joining this week's virtual meetup hosted by the Epilepsy Foundation of Wisconsin. Today, we're going to talk about a toolkit, which is a resource guide for parents with a newly diagnosed child. And I want to note that this also can be used for adults as well. So my name is Alicia Thompson. I am the program manager for Epilepsy Foundation of Wisconsin, and I have been with the foundation for almost a year now. And joining me is Kristen, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you. My name is Kristen Dostal. I'm the Development Director for the Epilepsy Foundation of Wisconsin. I've been with the foundation for several years and have been volunteering for probably about a decade. So definitely been around the epilepsy community for quite a while, and excited to talk to you guys today.
Wonderful. So the agenda for today is we're going to go through what you see on the screen, a little bit about what the purpose of this toolkit is, how parents can use it, and then there are 6 sections. We'll kind of just touch a little bit on each of those, and we'll get started. So the purpose of this toolkit is it's a resource guide for parents, and it's also a really great organizational tool. So I'll get into this a little bit more, but this is something, that a parent can take with them when they go with the child to see their neurologist or a doctor's appointment. And this is also a really great way to be communicating with anybody that's on your child's care team. Sometimes, it's not just you, it could be your spouse, a grandparent, teachers, neurologists, like I said, and it's just a really great way for everybody to, stay connected and kind of be on the same page as far as what's going on with that child. So how to use it, like I said, there's 6 sections and all of them are packed with information and tips. There's downloadable tools, and I know Kristen will get a little bit into the resources and forms towards the end of this. And then, like I said, it's really useful for appointments if you have, questions you want to make sure that you get answered when you go to see the child's neurologist. You can write them down in this book. There's a medical form that you can take with as well. So the first section is, about epilepsy. So what is epilepsy and what is a seizure? So to any parent that is new to this is, can be a very scary thing. This section kind of breaks down, generally what is epilepsy, and there are different seizure classifications. So it kind of goes into detail with that, what is a generalized seizure versus a focal. So generalized being the whole brain, focal being a part of the brain. Again, I don't want to go too much into detail, but it goes over that a little bit. Then we have myths and facts. So there is that is a useful tool for parents to kind of, maybe you've heard things, but you don't know if they're true. So that's in there as well. And then one of the bigger pieces is how a child might be diagnosed. So that process might look a little different for everybody, depending on the seizure type and medical history. But it goes through kind of what a doctor would look for. So for example, it would go through the medical history, ask questions about, if they've had a fever, and if they've had any head injuries, etc. And then they're going to ask about as a parent, what are you seeing when your child is having a seizure? So on here I have the seizure recognition and first aid table and a seizure record form. So Kristen will talk a little bit about these, a little bit more detail, but just to note, these are really useful. So if your child is having a seizure, you can have that seizure recognition and first aid table in front of you, and you can tell what kind of seizure they're having, what kind of first aid needs to be done, and then the seizure record form. So this is really great. You can jot down, it's a scary thing, and you want to help your child, but the best thing that you can do is to really just be there for them, let them go through that seizure, and write down anything you see. Are they having rhythmic jerking? Are they there's a lot of factors that you can jot down, kind of what you visually see going on, which will help that neurologist kind of diagnose your child. And then it goes into some other details about some other testing that can be done. So that's very, very, very helpful. And then it touches on treatments. So I won't go into too much detail, but What I will say is the goal is to, stop the seizures. That is the ultimate goal. And one of the biggest treatments is going to be medication. So you and your child will work with your neurologist to kind of go over, what medication might work. They might try different types, different dosages. It really depends on the type of seizure and some other factors as well. So it talks about some other treatments. And then one of my favorite parts about this section is the medical team providers that are defined. So as I talked about your child's care team, it might not just be a neurologist. You might be also working with a pediatrician and some other people in the medical field. So it gets a little confusing. There's a lot of people. So this is a really great way for you to kind of see who might be involved in your child's care. All right, then we're going to go right into section 2, so managing epilepsy. This section talks a lot about the importance of community. As a parent, you want to do everything possible to make sure your child is safe and healthy, but it's very important that you have other people, as part of that process. So that's why I have community on there. Whether that is, your spouse, grandparents, whoever it may be, but community is a really big thing. And then kind of touched on this a little bit, the medical visit form and then the seizure action plan. So medical form, as I mentioned, you take that into your doctor's office, and that's a great way to write down questions so you don't, miss anything that you might want to ask. And then seizure action plan, I'm actually going to talk about that on the next slide. And then we also here at the foundation, we have what's called a care notebook. I don't know, Kristen, do you want to talk about that at all right now?
Sure, absolutely. So the Epilepsy Foundation of Wisconsin developed a care notebook in conjunction with our national organization several years ago. And so it's very similar to the notebook, the care notebook, the toolkit that we're going over now from our national organization. Obviously outlining just a couple of in a different way. There is the ability to use and fill in forms on our notebook via a computer. So you can fill in forms right from your phone if you need to. So there's just a couple of differences, nothing major, but just a couple.
Yeah, and I think when we post this on the website, we can definitely link that as well, correct?
Yes, for sure.
Okay, wonderful. So just a few more things about the section 2. It talks about medication tips, which I think is very helpful, especially if parents are very new to this. Medication can be confusing. So there's some tips on that, which is really great. And what to do if your child does have a seizure. Again, this is where that seizure recognition form and the record form can come into play that I talked about previously. And then, wrapping that section up is just tips on how to keep your child safe. And let's go right into section 3. So how can parents help? So there's a few different parts I broke this down into. So again, I know I talked about the importance of, not doing this alone. So I have building a support network. So for example, here at the Epilepsy Foundation of Wisconsin, we have support groups that we do in person, and now we're doing them virtually. So in person, they're all around the state, which you can find on our website, and we can link that as well. And then Camp Phoenix. So Kristen, I'm going to let you talk about Camp Phoenix just very briefly if you want, just to share kind of what that is for people that don't know.
Absolutely. Camp Phoenix is a program that we developed with the Wisconsin Lions Camp, which is just outside of Stevens Point in Rochelle, Wisconsin. And Camp Phoenix is an opportunity for children ages 8 to 17 to get to experience a normal camp experience, just like any other kid, but a little bit more specific on, they get to spend the week with children that are just like them, children that have epilepsy, where epilepsy isn't a huge, massive event like it potentially could be in school where there's a lot of people watching. It's not the norm. It is very much the norm at camp. And so it teaches a child to what to do during a seizure for somebody else even, and how to get back out into doing things or what they were doing before and after a seizure. So great opportunity.
Yes, definitely. And then next I have respite care, because truthfully, sometimes, parents need to take a break. it can be a lot, especially if this is very new to you. So respite care allows you to take time for yourself, to take care of yourself physically and mentally. And I know, Kristen, did you want to talk about this now, or do you want to talk about it when you get to your slides?
I can talk about it in just a little bit.
Okay, sounds good. And then the next one I have is schools. So sending your child to school, this is where the seizure action plan can come into play. So what that is, it's a really great tool for your child's teachers, their bus driver, their, the principal, whoever it may be, the nurse. It has all the child's information and the guardian or parent's information, what type of seizures they're having, length of time, seizure first aid for that child, any specific, anything specific that needs to be taken care of if there's a rescue medication. It's just a really good tool for the school to have. And then I have backpack written down. If a child were to have a rescue medication, it's really important that it's sent to school with the child, and the teachers or whoever is going to come in contact during the day knows that the rescue medication is in there. And some other thing, the seizure action plan can be in there. Kristen, am I forgetting anything that we talk about to put in the backpack?
No, maybe a change of clothes.
Yes, right.
Something like that, just extra resources for your child in the event, that a seizure does happen, like you were talking about.
Yeah, thank you. And then journal is another one. So having communication between parents and the nurse and the teacher is really helpful if they, ended up having a seizure the night before, maybe to document that so that way the nurse or the teacher kind of knows if things are a little off with the child the next day, and vice versa. That's a really good tool as well. And then the last one I have there is educating. So Epilepsy Foundation here, we do educating in schools for school personnel, for classrooms, for nurses. We also go out in businesses and do this because really educating is, the number one way for people to know how to do seizure first aid, kind of talk about the different classifications, and really, teach about epilepsy so we can stop seizures. So that is to wrap up section 3. And Kristen, I think this is you.
Yeah, so section 4 talks about life stages with epilepsy. And as a parent, what should you be concerned about? How can you help? What are some of those things that could be useful to you? So one of the key points that we want to make sure that people understand with a newly diagnosed child, or anyone of that fact, is that epilepsy affects children of all people, of all ages, stages. It doesn't discriminate, so it can affect anybody. And that it doesn't affect any two people in the same way. So seizures are not identical from person to person. Somebody might have what we call a baseline for their seizures, but it's not going to mimic exactly anybody else's. So it's important to realize, to know that epilepsy is unique in that way. The section also talks about communication. So communication is going to be key, whether it's talking to your child, whether it's talking to your care providers, whether it's talking to friends, family, the Epilepsy Foundation. And so, it talks just a little bit about how to do some of those things. Talking to your child as soon as they're able to understand about epilepsy, it's going to be pretty general and easy for them to understand at that point. And when they get older, you can talk in more depth. But helping them to be able to be comfortable talking about epilepsy is really important to start at an early age. Meet with your teachers, meet with your other family members, and how these children can benefit from all of this help. Sometimes other doctors, Alicia, you had talked about a care team. Sometimes that can involve a therapist or psychologist, depending upon what concerns parents might have about their child. And then, so then we go into talking, I think you can go to the next slide. Yep, perfect. So the stages it talks about, so infants and toddlers and children is kind of how it starts. So seizures occur most often in the early stages of life because that's when the brain is doing the most growing and the most developing. And so recognizing a seizure in an infant can be very difficult because they're not able to tell you how they feel. They're not, they can't talk to you. And so it could be potentially a challenge at that point. And so recognizing a seizure along with a diagnosis could be hard. Alicia talked about some other resources that are good. Cell phones are so prevalent in today's world that taking a video often helps the medical team be able to diagnose things like, when your child is having a seizure, what type of seizure that is. In the infant and toddler stage, one of the biggest challenges that people or parents might recognize is difficulties with childcare, in obtaining childcare. And so this section talks a little bit more about that and where to get more resources, and how to talk to the Epilepsy Foundation. We can help you through that, and just kind of what questions to ask and what processes to take if you need that. The next stage of life, so children, so obviously around the age of 4 to probably 10. So obviously at this stage, children are going to be more aware of what's going on, and it can impact their lives in different ways. So it can impact more on, obviously they're going to school. So it can impact school, it can impact sports that they play, friends. And so the more that you talk to your child about that communication aspect, again, the better it's going to be for them. So just make sure that they're living a happy, healthy life. And again, talk to them, you can show them videos. The Epilepsy Foundation has some great resources, and how to explain what a seizure is to them, and maybe what happens, during their seizure, so they're able to understand, so it's not such a scary thing to them. And then possible challenges, I think we kind of might be a little self-explanatory in there when we talk about school. Alicia mentioned the seizure action plan, which we'll go over at the end. But that could, school is a big potential challenge there. You can go to the next slide. So the last stage it talks about with as to children is the adolescent stage. And so the preteen, early teen years is difficult for everybody, no matter if you have epilepsy or not. So there's lots of changes going on. There's temptations, things like that. And the key point that we want to talk about this is talk openly, and as often as possible with your child, and about other concerns that they have. So whether it's epilepsy, it could be other things that are going on at school, things that are going on with them. They're doing lots of change, their bodies are changing. There's hormonal changes, things that are like that going on. Social life can definitely be a challenge at this stage. I think everybody remembers being in that adolescent stage in school. Driving is a big component for adolescents. And so if a child has active epilepsy and active seizures, they're not able to drive unless they are seizure-free for 3 months in the state of Wisconsin. And so that's, each state is unique. And so not all of them are the same across the board. There's other concerns in the adolescent section that you definitely can read into, but I don't want to go into all of those, as this is kind of a tool for parents to utilize on their own. Transition to healthcare is huge. So when a child is 16, 17, 18, they are going to transition to an adult epileptologist, potentially adult neurologist, versus their pediatric care provider. So, how to talk to your doctor, how to ask questions, just to understand more about what is happening to them and how to express their opinions. A very common question that we get around the adolescent stage is when we talk about SUDEP. So SUDEP, if you don't know, is the sudden unexplained death in epilepsy, which means in otherwise a healthy person, a person passes away due to a seizure during their sleep. So this can, although it's rare, epilepsy isn't rare. So it's a big question that parents are going to, potentially ask. And so we want to make sure that parents are able to ask that question of their care provider. What are my risks? What information do I need to know that I don't know now? So the Epilepsy Foundation has a unique program just for that, about SUDEP. So we want to make sure that everybody knows that's available. And one of the other things about, in the communication aspect we talked about was, I wanted to show you guys a little bit of a video. So Alicia, if you could click on that video, it should play. We just wanted to show you a small part of this video from the Epilepsy Foundation, where they encourage people to talk about it. The Epilepsy Foundation's advocates work, nationally to spread awareness and to talk and to help parents and children, individuals, to realize that they're not alone in this fight. So this is really an important thing to share. And you can definitely access any of these videos on the Epilepsy Foundation's YouTube channel. We will also link it in our Epilepsy of Wisconsin website, so you are able to check them out there. So lots of information. Definitely feel free to look for that. And if Alicia, you want to go to the next slide. So stage 5 is a section of resources. So there's lots of websites, lots of books, lots of information out there. So some of the key websites that you would want to check out would be ours, definitely. So the Epilepsy Foundation of Wisconsin. And then our national organization as well that we're an affiliate of, which is the Epilepsy Foundation of America. And so we get a lot of our information from the CDC to share with our communities. And so that's definitely a place to look in addition to those other websites that I just gave you. We are blessed with a lot of books that talk about epilepsy in different ways. Children's books all the way up to, how-tos for parents. So there's a comprehensive list actually of books here for parents to actually, look into, dig into, find out, where they can find some of these resources on their own. It also talks about frequently asked questions. So questions about epilepsy, questions about types of epilepsy. I'm not going to go through them just because if somebody has a question, they definitely can check it out. And common epilepsy terms is a big one. Alicia, you mentioned that common, the medical team and what that means. So common terms, epilepsy there's a lot of components to it. And so we talk about seizure classification. Alicia talked about generalized or focal. So what that means and what are the subcategories of each of those? Excuse me. See, I did it. The classifications for seizures were redone in 2017. So this is a great place for people to look at what a seizure used to be called versus what they call it now. So the doctor is going to use most likely the updated term, and somebody would potentially maybe remember a term that they had heard as a child, and so they would maybe reference that. And so it's just an easy way for parents or individuals, anybody looking for more information, to put 2 and 2 together there. And then the local Epilepsy Foundation is us. And one thing to note there is an Epilepsy Foundation in almost all of the states in the United States. So the support network for the foundation is huge. The support network for our clients, for the people impacted by epilepsy, is incredible. And so to make sure that, people aren't alone in this journey. This journey is not an easy journey, but you don't have to go through it on your own. So that's a great information resource there. And then Alicia, if you want to go to the next slide, we'll talk about the stage 6 of the toolkit talks about forms. So this is a place where you can access all of the forms that we have talked about during this discussion and forms that we have not talked about. So Alicia mentioned the seizure recognition and first aid form, which is the form that you see on the left. And this is something you can print out. This is something that you can share with other people, school personnel, friends and family, or even keep it to yourself as an easy access. So you can understand a little bit more of what seizures potentially look like, what happens, and what do you do? Because seizure first aid isn't always the same for every type of seizure. And Alicia mentioned the seizure action plan, which is pictured on the right, which is an amazing tool for children or anybody affected by epilepsy if there's other care involved. So this is a form for everybody to be on the same page. So medical team, education team, and family team. So all of the resources are listed there, what to do, how to do it, who to notify, are there medications, what steps do we go through? So the seizure action plan is available on our website, not in this toolkit. So this is accessible for anybody at any time. And Alicia, if you want to go to the next slide. Some of the other forms that are available, and there's a lot of them, so it could be potentially overwhelming to see, but a medication record, a seizure record, medical appointments, a list of medical providers, a list of school personnel, teachers that the child has or has had, a telephone log. So all of this is meant for somebody to be able to take this toolkit or these forms and have everything that their child is going through with epilepsy all documented in one place. So anything that goes on is recorded in some way or fashion. So this is almost a sense of safety, that it's all right in one place, that you're not going to forget something. Because you only get a certain amount of time with your care team. I think everybody knows that. And so we want to make sure that our clients and their parents have all of these resources available at one time. So the two we talked about were the toolkit from our national organization and then the Epilepsy Foundation of Wisconsin's toolkit. And so these forms are able, you can print them off like we talked about earlier, or you can fill them out and save them, on a laptop, on an iPad, on a phone. All pretty easy. And where can you find these? Is that kind of where I talked about that already. And really it's, if you have questions about how to fill any of these out, where you get more of them, or I need to change something, you can customize these if you need to. So if you don't need a column, or you need to, rechange it to something else, feel free to do so. This is your child, your journey. So this is just meant to be a tool to assist you. So that pretty much sums up what the toolkit is. And there is a lot of information in here, but definitely feel free to explore at your own time. And so this little talk that we did was just to kind of go over it at a high level. So there wasn't anything that we dove into too deeply, to give you a lot of information all at one time. So, definitely look into it. Give us a call, give us an email if you have any questions. We definitely be able to answer them for you if we can. If we cannot, we will definitely help you find those answers. And we look forward to working with you. We know this journey is not an easy one. And so for you to have a support system from day one is huge. And so there are people there for you in every capacity to help you get through this, and to help you live the normal, happy life that everybody would like to live. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you very much. Have a great day, everybody.